Are we there yet, Keith?
We are, yeah, we're now live on YouTube, so we're ready to start. So,
all right, thank you very much. Welcome everybody to this meeting of Liss Parish Council on the 15th of July. Can I start with apologies, please?
We have apologies from Councillors Nibbs and Gerard.
Right, thank you indeed. Declaration of interest. As you know, there's a form of words here, either to say you have no interest or you do have an interest. And I'm obliged to do this in alphabetical order, apparently. So choose which one you're going to say, no interest or if you have an interest. Can I start off with you, Sheila? Sheila Baldwin?
She needs to unmute.
Sorry. Okay, I'm Sheila Baldwin, a member of Liss Parish Council. I have read the agenda and I have no interests in any of the items on the agenda.
Thank you very much. Keith Budden.
I'm Councillor Keith Budden. I'm a councillor on Liss Parish Council. I have read the agenda and I have no interest to declare in any of the items on the agenda this evening.
Thank you. Cindy Edwards. Cindy? I've lost you.
Back. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're on now.
Yeah, I, Cindy Edwards, I'm a parish councillor of Liss Parish Council. I confirm that I've read the agenda and have no interest in declaring any of the applications being considered this evening.
Thank you very much. Then to me, I, Roger Hargreaves, am a parish councillor of Liss Parish Council. I confirm that I have read the agenda and have no interest to declare in any of the items being considered this evening. Right. Don is an apology. Margaret Nibbs is an apology. Howard Lindsay.
I'm Howard Lindsley. I'm a member of Liss Parish Council. I have read the agenda and I have no interest to declare.
Thank you. Leanne MacDonald.
I, Leanne MacDonald, I'm a parish councillor of Liss Parish Council. I confirm that I have read the agenda and have no interest to declare in any of the items being considered this evening.
Thank you. Andy Smith.
I, Andy Smith, am a councillor on Liss Parish Council. I have read the agenda and I can confirm that I have no interest to declare on any of the items this evening.
Thank you. Claire Williams.
I, Claire Williams, am a parish councillor of Liss Parish Council. I've confirmed I have read the agenda and have no interest to declare in any of the items being considered this evening.
Thank you very much. Nick Wilson. Nick, go ahead.
I, Nick Wilson, am a parish councillor of Liss Parish Council. I confirm I've read the agenda and wish to declare an interest in the following item being considered this evening. Item 12. It's a non-pecuniary interest.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. That concludes the declarations of interest. Item 3, Chairman's announcements. I think Chairman's announcements have been circulated, but I will just come on to 2 or 3 points arising out of them. As you know, sadly, we've had Councillors Dodd and James resigning. David Dodd, after having done much work, and that's hard work for the council, and we will miss that work and his significant experience on this, particularly in terms of the facilities committee. And Councillor Ian James, a much newer member of the council, will be missed for his enthusiasm and his ideas. We wish them both well. And both vacancies are now being advertised using the prescribed form for doing that. One of the consequences of that is that Ian James had volunteered to basically put together an Edit Village Voice. So we now need to consider whether we do that either in the existing format, or perhaps this is a time to look as to whether we actually change the format or not. Certainly, though, we would be interested to hear from anybody who was interested in doing some work on that. You'll also note that all play areas were reopened on the 4th of July, but this is following a rigorous risk assessment and appropriate signage, which is basically saying that users must use the equipment appropriately, because there are limits to how much we can police that. And also, you'll be glad to know that the football pitches at Newman Collard have been reopened after the collapse of one of the floodlights, which was reported. Not directly our responsibility, but again, thanks to the clerk and the assistant clerk and the groundsman, the site secure and cleared up when it actually happened. We're now also looking at opening the village hall and pavilion for various activities in line with government guidelines. Again, these need a careful risk assessment as to how this can be done. At the moment, we think it will probably not be until September that we actually open them, which it falls naturally into place because during August, most activities don't take place in the hall or the pavilion anyway. And again, I think come September, we're going to be looking at how we carry out our own meetings. And I hope personally that we can meet in person in September, albeit not, I think, squeezing committees into the small parish office, but sitting around the walls of the village hall. But one of the issues that we have to consider is that, of course, all our meetings are open to the public. And you can't let the public in under the rules, so we need to still find some way of videoing meetings so that the public can see them as they take place. That's something that we're now looking at. Otherwise, that's all I have to say under my announcements. Right. Any comment on anything? No?
Well, I've just got a query. I don't know whether there's scope to ask it later on. It was really just about the update on the toilets for the village hall and how it fits in with reopening the village hall.
Okay, can we just touch that under item 6, which arises? Do feel free to just ask where we are, and I will freely say that I will turn to the clerk at that point to just update us where the work has got to.
Okay. Right.
Thank you very much.
Chair, could I say something about Village Voice?
Oh yes.
I feel sort of hesitant to say this, given all the hard work that Keith has done on Village Voice over the years, but reflecting on the fast-moving events of recent months, I sort of hanker after something that's sort of smaller and more frequent. But clearly, the big challenge, apart from producing the document, is distributing, which led me to suggest to Sarah the other day that we might want to consider a different sort of vehicle. I'm conscious that there's been a lot of use of social media prompted by the COVID situation. And I note that the COVID support Facebook page is now to become a community hub page. And I just wonder whether we could think of some sort of hybrid where we use all the social media available to do something more frequently, sort of up to the minute, but also provide printed versions of those updates available for people to collect, which we could advertise on notice boards. It's just a thought to sort of feed in, not obviously that you would want to have a long debate on it this evening.
Thank you very much for that. I do actually agree that I think it's something we need to look at, that the present format requires us to put an awful lot of effort into producing a village voice. and it takes us some time to do that. And then we have the distribution issue, and it's not very nimble, therefore, at responding to the immediacy of life. I think I quite like to see on a piece of paper some of your ideas and there's other ideas from other people as to how we might do it. I won't have a debate now, it's not on the agenda per se, but I do think it's worth just rethinking what we do Village Voice. Is that okay with else if we just initiate work to look at that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we also have to bear in mind that, you know, there are some people who are not on the internet and who actually look forward to, if that's the right phrase, to look forward to a copy of the Village Voice.
Yes, I think we all recognise the great difficulty is you cannot rely on everybody being on net and social media and any of these mechanisms, and so we do still need that issue. Okay, let me leave. Sorry.
Can I raise something on one of the other items you mentioned? And that is using the village hall for meetings. There are outside organisations who use normally the committee room, the staff room, for meetings, and clearly that's not suitable at the moment. Does your thing about using the village hall, does that extend to other organisations which normally use our premises?
My understanding is yes, it is looking at any potential user and how they would fit into government guidelines.
Okay.
On this, and you're right. There will have to be some changes, and particularly people who use smaller rooms. I can see big changes. Okay. Right. Let me move on from that. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Can I turn to item 4, which is minutes of our last meeting? First of all, are they a true and correct record? Anybody got any comment?
There's just a couple of typos which I just came across when I was reading it a few minutes ago.
If they're just typos, then are there many?
Just 2. It's the same word misspelt in both.
I'm agog to know what the word is.
It's willing or wiley, if you want to take it as it's typed here. It's on page 3, 70/20. Yes. It's about Flood Action Group, and it's 1 and 2.
Oh yes, not enough L.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's supposed to.
Need some more L.
Yes.
I think what
was whiling away.
Sorry.
Any other comments on the minutes? Right. Okay. Could I have somebody move adoption of the minutes, please?
I will.
Thank you very much, Howard. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much, Leanne. I won't have a formal vote, but can I assume everybody is in favour?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody against? No. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Matters arising. Anybody got anything they wish to bring up on the minutes? Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much indeed. Right, let me move to item 5, which is the RFO's report. Which is fairly short. Do I have comments from anyone? Anything anybody wants to raise?
I just had one question. Really just for confirmation. On the pavilion account, the payments by bank transfer to Tilden and to Michael Weeksley, I'm assuming they're the final payments now. Yes, Sarah's nodding, so yeah.
Yes, I was about to say yes, but Sarah will know better than me. The clerk is advising us that they are the final payments.
They are indeed the final payments.
Great, okay.
That's good, because all the snagging has been done. There is nothing further to be done on the pavilion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes. Useful to note that actually that the pavilion is now absolutely entirely finished. All the snagging has been done, therefore final payment has been made. Any other points on arising out of the RFO's report? No, in that case then, could I have somebody to move approval of the, do we need to move approval, do we? Yes,
Good, yeah.
move approval of these notes.
Claire's indicating, so.
Thank you,
I'll
Claire.
do it as well.
And Howard.
Howard will second it. Okay. Can I assume you're all in favour?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Nobody against? Silence. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. I've got a copy here which I will be signing and will be handing to the clerk at some point following this meeting. But here I go signing. Thank you very much indeed on that. Now, item 6, it would actually be helpful. Could I just ask the clerk just to update us as to where we are on the toilet refurbishment, and then I would the specific point of motion.
The Village Hall toilet refurbishment should be completed, ready for the Village Hall to reopen from the 10th of August, if that is in line with the risk assessment. But the project will be completed by around the 10th of August.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed. One of the things that was identified as we were looking at the toilets was that in addition to what was included in the original specification, was that actually it could be desirable to have touch-free taps in the toilets. That is what we decided to go for. That required an additional £798 to be found, and therefore this motion is that we should find that further £798 from the Village Hall Capital Works allocated reserves, which are reserves there for works on the Village Hall, mainly general maintenance and so on, but we thought that this was a good use of that money. So I'm going to move the motion that Liss Parish Council allocates the first £798 from Village Hall Capital Works allocated reserves to the Village Hall toilet refurbishment project. Could I have a seconder for that motion?
I'm happy to second that.
Sorry, who was that?
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is everybody in favour of that motion?
Yeah.
Anybody against it? In that case, that motion is carried. Now, item 7, again, I will just turn to the clerk just to say a word about the structural inspection report and what in general terms is actually saying to us. It clearly is implying that we need to have funds and money available for the future in terms of maintenance. Sarah, could I just turn to you for just a couple of words on that?
Of course, yes. In June we had a full inspection report completed on the Village Hall, which is the first in a number of years, I understand. It has highlighted a number of works that are required, including some roofing works, internal decor in the near future, but not so immediate, and various other measures, including some woodwork and so on. And looking at the budget, we have insufficient funds in order to take forward what is needed now. Hence the request for these extra funds made available, ready for the facility committee to look at it in more detail. But the recommendations are quite clear. There was quite a lot of work that needs doing within the next year, which we can't fund from the existing budget.
And it so happens that within SIL, we do have a sum of 5,000 odd, which has been paid to us. and so we are actually holding that money, and we are entitled to spend it on refurbishment and maintenance under the SIL rules. So if people are comfortable with that, that's what is proposed. Anybody like to comment?
Well, I'm certainly quite happy with the idea. I think that makes sense because having read the structural inspection report, there's certainly all things that we have to do. So yeah, I think it's good use of that money.
Thank you for that.
This is nothing to do with the car going in the side, I assume.
No.
No, that was paid for through insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move the motion that Liss Parish Council allocates SIL receipts to the sum of £5,033.48 to Village Hall building maintenance to fund works identified in a recent structural inspection report, with the Facilities Committee to agree the priority order of work. Could I have a seconder for that motion?
Happy to do so, yeah.
Thank you very much, Nick. Okay. Is everybody in favour of the motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there anybody against the motion? No, in that case, we take the motion as being carried. Thank you very much indeed. Item 8, a motion from the Chairman of Finance. If I could turn to the Chairman of Finance and ask, or the Chair rather, of Finance, and ask her to introduce that item and move the motion.
Okay. So, as you know, I must apologise. There's a helicopter flying over my house at the moment.
We won't ask what you're doing.
Well, I'll stick my head out the window, but yeah. As you know, we are busy implementing a new software system, and one of the things that came up in the middle of the installation, probably partly as a result of the COVID situation, is that there's a bit more of a need for some slightly more robust networking of the 3 computers that are going to be using the system. So Lizzie, Sarah and Liz. And as a result, we're looking at something that is a bit more of a cloud option. But in order to do that, we need extra funds to be allocated to the project. So I move that we approve a budget figure of an extra £972 to allow Sarah, Lizzie and Liz to be able to use the new system come what may.
Thank you very much indeed. Anybody wish to comment or raise questions?
I've just got a query about where the money is coming from, sorry. Where is the money coming from?
It'll be coming from our general reserves.
Right.
I'll second that, by the way. Just doesn't it need a seconder before we can talk
Yeah.
about it?
Well, I hadn't yet asked for the seconder, but I'll keep you there as the seconder. Anybody
Good. Sorry, jumping ahead.
Anybody else got any comment?
Just to say my recollection from the meeting as an observer, I hasten to say, was that we had various examples of where the recent COVID situation had meant that we were actually in a rather better budgetary position than we might have been. So it seems to me we must have headroom to do this.
We do.
Okay, that was Claire saying that we do have some headroom. Is that right?
That's right.
Good, good. I would just add the comment that I do think we're finding, particularly as a result of greater use of IT, will only continue to grow. We do need more robust, and we need to look a little bit beyond our own office, particularly if we're going to have people working from home. So I have no doubt at all that this is well worth doing. That's my personal view. Okay, the motion from the Chair of Finance is that Liss Parish Council will approve a budget figure of up to £972 for a cloud-based networking system for the new RBS financial software system to network the office computers on any device and to support home-based working in all areas. Do I gather I have Andy Smith as a seconder to that motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Right. Okay. All those in favour?
Aye.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody against? Right. Okay. Thank you. That's approved. Item 9. Again, can I turn to the Chair of Finance to introduce this item?
Okay. So procedurally, we have to reappoint auditors at the beginning of every financial year. We considered Light Touch, who have been doing it for quite a while now. We have a really good reputation, relationship with them, and they are cost effective. So I move that we reappoint them for the next financial year. The Finance Committee discussed it last Monday and we're in agreement too.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Anybody want to raise any questions? No, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, can we move the motion? All those in favour? Everybody? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody against? No, okay, the motion is carried. Right, okay. Then item 10, a motion from the Chair of Highways. Could I turn to Andy to introduce this item?
Yeah, and I need to make a couple of amendments to the motion, including increasing the figure and changing the reference to the device. So can I read out what the new motion is, just so everyone's got it? It's that LPC approves the allocation of £1,153.80. So that's an amendment.
Sorry, what?
£1,153.80. For the traffic calming, from the traffic calming reserves to pay for the repair and proposed upgrade to the SID, speed indicator device. We've been using the wrong name for it for a while. Machine, so as to store as well as display data and to cover the cost of Hampshire County Council fees for the review of SID deployment sites. So the amendments to the motion are essentially an extra £250 added to the cost because Hampshire County Council need to review the sites with us to make sure that we can put it in the right place. And this is about making sure we can still deploy it properly outside the school, for example, where we've had a number of issues relating to speeding and accidents around there. And the second amendment to the motion is to change the TSR to SID, so it's given its proper name. The purpose of this is basically to agree to fund the replacement of our TSR, which was broken and not working, so we've had to send it off to the manufacturer to be replaced. And at the same time, there was a proposition of an upgrade to allow the device to store data on speed and display it, which is an upgrade. So it was significantly cheaper than buying a new device. And former councillor Ian James was quite keen to proceed with this before he regrettably decided to resign. So I'm just kind of bringing forward the motion and allowing us to upgrade the device and check speeds appropriately across the place and make sure that where we place it is compliant with Hampshire County Council requirements, and therefore we can use the information that it gathers to help inform decisions going forward.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder for the motion?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I just had a query. Does it require ongoing maintenance in terms of finance maintenance?
I don't believe so. So we will have a cost of placing it on signs because that will be our responsibility. But I believe it is either battery powered or solar powered, and I can confirm one way or the other. And the only cost of maintenance is moving it around and repairing it should it break, as has happened here.
It doesn't have to have an annual service or anything.
Not that I'm aware of. And essentially, we're repairing and upgrading a device that we already have. So, you know, maybe that we do want to look into servicing it regularly if that's possible, given the breakdown has cost us £124 to repair. But I don't believe there's any ongoing cost required from this.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I think to help you on that, I the current one is battery powered, and we have 2 sets of batteries, I understand, so that one can be recharging whilst the others are being used.
Thanks, Howard. That's helpful.
Yes, I'd rather assume that the new one being a sort of upgrade of the old one would probably still be battery powered, renewable battery powered, but I don't actually know that for certain.
Just to clarify, it's not a new machine, it's a repair and upgrade of the existing machine.
The old one.
I'm
Yeah.
assuming it's still battery powered.
Yes.
Yeah. Quite. Okay.
So it's not a new, we're not buying a new device.
No.
No,
it's
the devices
upgraded.
are,
Right.
they're very expensive.
No, we are upgrading, repairing our device which is broken, and therefore we've been unable to deploy it recently.
Yeah.
Upgrading it to give it greater functionality, and also working with Hampshire County Council on locations to make sure we have the proper permissions to put it on lampposts around the village.
Okay.
Can I just offer a comment? I mean, I think it's a cheap, relatively cheap way of us getting a visible sign of our commitment to speed reduction and traffic calming. So I strongly support doing this.
Thank you very much, Nick. Any other comments? Okay. Sorry, remind me, who said they would second that motion?
Cindy.
Cindy, yeah. Very much indeed. Okay. So the motion is that Liss Parish Council approve the allocation of £1,153.80 coming reserves to pay for the repair and proposed upgrade to a speed indicator device machine to store as well as display data. Is everybody in favour of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody against? No, thank you very much indeed. In which case that motion is carried. Okay. Item 11, a motion from the Chair of Highways. Andy, could you introduce this, please?
Oh, he's disappeared.
Andy?
My video broke just at the wrong time. So I want to be clear, first of all, that this is a kind of motion in my name as a parish councillor, and though this item has been discussed in Highways Committee and across the piece, and colleagues, a number of colleagues have had a chance to comment on it, this is not a motion being brought by me on behalf of the Highways Committee and in capacity as chair of that committee, as I know that there was some confusion potentially about that. So I wanted to be really clear. I also wanted to start by explaining a bit of the history to where the motion has come from, what it does propose and what it doesn't propose, and what I think the way forward might be after this debate. So where the motion has come from is village centre improvement is a fundamental ambition in the Liss neighbourhood plan. I think if you read through the document, it's really clear that the neighbourhood plan envisages work on street scene improvements, improvements on walking and cycling, and general beautification of the village. We, in our action plan, have a strong commitment to deliver the neighbourhood plan. And in the Highways Committee, towards the back end of last year, we went through the neighbourhood plan to see which priorities potentially touched on the Highways Committee to identify our future work programme. That's minuted in the minute of the meeting, and I, with a couple of colleagues, volunteered to take forward some work scoping what village centre redesign would look like. That work, it became quite clear to the group that were undertaking the review quite early that actually we would probably need some specialist service support doing that work if we were to develop a pipeline of bids for external funding from SIL. So we went to Finance Committee in December last year and asked for 10,000 to be ring-fenced in a budget for spending on specialist services on village centre improvements to deliver the neighbourhood plan recommendation. That Finance Committee quite rightly scrutinised that and said actually the proposals aren't probably worked up as much as they should be. We agree with that in principle, but further work needs to be done on the proposition, and it needs to be brought back before budget can be included and ring fenced. So in Highways Committee in January, an update was provided, which is shown in the minutes, and I was tasked with producing a document which set out I think the ambitions of the parish council and to bring it back in into the organisation to take that forward. Over the period of lockdown, Lizzie, Keith, former councillor David Dodds and Russell Oppenheimer and I have been doing some work thinking about proposals, going through the neighbourhood plan and the village design statement to work up a draft specialist services brief that we would share as we went out to tender to test the market to see if there was an ability to deliver this work. That is what I mentioned at the in my update to Highways Committee of the 4th of July, where I updated on a number of pieces of work that were being taken forward during lockdown, and it was subsequently circulated to the committee, I think on the 6th of July, with a week for comments. It was also mentioned in the inaugural meeting of the project review group. So I believed that colleagues had been cited on the development of the process over the months, and colleagues had had an opportunity on relevant committee, on the Highways Committee, to feed in on the draft document. However, since I circulated the document and this motion got laid, I've had a couple of comments from a couple of individuals, and I've reflected on those, and I'll talk about my reflections after I've talked about what this motion does and doesn't do. First of all, this motion doesn't give me or any one individual carte blanche to spend £10,000 on specialist services. What it does do is allocate £10,000 from our general reserve into a budget to be spent on specialist services. It's important to note that is up to £10,000. The ambition would be to bring this in way below that, if possible, throughout the procurement process. The motion also sets the procurement process and finalisation of the document to be agreed and approved by the project review group. And the reason why it specifically does that is because in highways, when we first discussed this, actually it was felt like this was a issue that goes beyond the Highways Committee and should be referred to project review group to manage. So I've taken that feedback on board and made that proposition. And also the motion specifically references that the procurement would be run in accordance with standing orders and financial regulations. And just to be clear what that means, it means that any spend of up to £5,000 would need to be put to the committee and agreed to formally before it is spent, should this motion pass. Any spend over £5,000 would need to go to full council for agreement to be spent once we have a preferred specialist services provider, should we get there, if we get to that place. So there are no decisions now on the document. That is for the project review group under the proposition of the motion. There are no decisions on spending now. This is just to get a budget allocated to it so we can take forward the next stage of the process. And I think that's really, really important. I said I wanted to talk about feedback I've received from colleagues and the fact that there was some concern that the Highways Committee in particular had not been as involved in working up the document. While I have said that it was circulated for written comment, I accept that perhaps in retrospect the committee could have had a conversation about it at a meeting, and also on reflection, I also think the planning committee may have an interest in discussing this item. So my proposition is that prior to the next project review group, I will look to arrange a Highways Committee to specifically look at this in the next 2 weeks to feed in comments to the project review group pending their finalisation of the document, and in agreement with the chair of planning, I will arrange for the document to be circulated on the planning agenda for the planning committee to discuss and develop any comments that they wish to feed in on the document prior to it going to project review group. But I have thought about withdrawing the motion on the back of feedback. Actually, having spoken to a number of colleagues about that, I don't think that is the right approach. And actually this compromise approach of passing the motion to allocate the budget and also formally delegating the future finalisation of the document and the procurement process to the project review group is the right thing, so we can show that we're making progress on the action plan. But I acknowledge that there's a legitimate interest of both the Highways Committee and the Planning Committee, and I will seek to arrange a meeting of the Highways Committee in the next 2 weeks to enable that committee to discuss the document and feed in any comments to the project review group. I hope that's a helpful summary of the proposition. I just wanted to say that I really valued the consultation with all of the colleagues on the line that I spoke to. Actually, everyone's wise counsel has really helped me think about how to present this motion and how to draw in the talents and best endeavours of colleagues on the council. So I am grateful for all the feedback that I've received as I've taken this work forward, because I think the proposal is in a good place and is a good compromise of making progress and moving forward, while also making sure that the relevant committees get the opportunity to feed in comments in an appropriate manner. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much indeed for that, Andy.
Is it possible if I second that move, please? I'd just like to show my full support on what Andy's saying also.
Thank you very much for that, Cindy. Can I just unpick that a bit? I've been very aware that there have been some concerns amongst members that there hasn't been scrutiny of aspects of this proposal. What I think Andy is now saying is that he's asking you that today you should agree in principle to seeking specialist services to have a look at the project, and that process should be managed by the project review group. And secondly, that we should allocate a reserve 10,000K for that money. Will be spent with a couple of cards, as he mentioned, in terms of the amounts. But thirdly, that the brief itself perhaps does need further scrutiny, and that should be referred back certainly to Highways and possibly also in planning as well. Ourselves to the base, but recognise that the brief on which all the work is going to do Highways.
Sorry, Roger, I'm not able to hear what you're saying.
We lost your sound there for a moment, Roger.
How can my golden words be lost? Right, I'll go back then, and I may repeat the bits that you already heard. What I was saying is that we effectively now got a motion which is this, and I think we need to change the word probably to reflect this, if this is what we do. One, that we do commit ourselves to seeking specialist services, and secondly, that process is managed by the project review group because it covers the interest of more than one committee. Secondly, that we should allocate a reserve of up to 10, but he mentioned in the paper there are some safeguards as to how that should be spent. But thirdly, the actual brief on which all the work is being done, that should be remitted back for further scrutiny, particularly to Highways, but perhaps it should also go to planning, I think Andy was saying on that. So we commit ourselves to the basic direction in which we're going on that. But we do take the opportunity to more detailed scrutiny of the brief itself. Highway. That is designed to still keep us moving forward, while at the same time recognising that some members felt there was still a need for some further scrutiny of the brief. Is that correct, Andy, in the way I've summarised that?
Yes, it is correct. The only the only minor thing I would say is budget, not reserve, because there's a technical difference as I understand it, and the motion is for a budget. And also, just to be really clear, that I think because of the cross-cutting nature, it's for the project review group to finally sign off the document. It's for other committees to comment on it as part of their scrutiny work.
Does it require the motion to be amended to specifically say that the brief itself will be remitted back to highways and to planning if required?
Sorry, Roger, I personally don't think it does, because we've just had a commitment from me to do that. And actually, if you look at the purpose of the motion, it is just where it is going forward. So I would expect the project review group to, when this paper comes forward to it, say what were highways and planning's comments, and if there are none, to go, right, we're not considering it until we see there are some. So I personally don't think the motion needs amending.
Okay, I'll wait to hear what people have to say then. Thank you very much for that. Right, okay. Howard, do you want to go?
Yes, I'd like to formally propose that this motion is remitted to the Highways Committee so that they have a chance to discuss it, because it hasn't been discussed at Highways in any detail at all. And this document came out after the last Highways meeting. The person who proposed the motion as chairman of Highways is now accepting that by saying, I'm proposing it in my own right and not chairman of Highways, which is rather a funny sort of thing, because it's difficult. We've had a promise that nothing will be taken on this, no action will be taken on this until the council has agreed. So that's accepted, that there is no need to do this in a hurry. It's not as if the general reserves are going to go out. It is important, very important, I believe, that this be seen to become from the members of the Highways Committee, who have not had an opportunity to discuss this in the detail. Also, I would point out that it seems to have suddenly become the project review group who are taking over the running of this. Now, if I can quote from your, Mr. Chair's document, the projects committee established priorities, social and physical infrastructure, devise a process, I can't read my own writings, the prioritise what the priorities, and this must include community engagement. The PRG will mainly come to place when it comes to ensuring that the projects have been properly assessed. Now, they haven't been properly assessed yet, and therefore the PRG shouldn't actually have dealt with it. And I would have said that at the PRG meeting, but by some sort of misunderstanding, I wasn't invited to that. I'm not blaming anybody, it's as much me as anybody. Many projects will have origins with other committees, particularly facilities and highways, who we do much of the work. Now, what we actually have here is a motion being put to us by the chairman of Highways, whether he's likely to admit that he's chairman of Highways or not. He's putting that motion. It has not been discussed by the Highways Committee in any detail, only in the principle that we should be looking at it. And therefore, I propose that this be remitted to the Highways Committee.
Thank you very much, Howard. Can I just clarify, are you seeking the entire motion to be remitted back, or simply for the brief to be back for scrutiny?
The entire motion.
Okay.
Everything, the brief, everything. I think it's only if we're going to have a Highways Committee, we should have and bypass them, and they have been bypassed on this.
I would second that.
Right, okay, so I'll take Leanne as the seconder to that motion. Right, could I have other views, please? Leanne, do you want to speak?
Sorry?
Leanne, do you want to speak as a seconder or speak later?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that Andy's had a bit of a rethink and come up with a bit of a compromise, and realises that actually it should have actually gone to the Highways Committee, should have had much more of an input to the document that's being produced. So if the Finance Committee have in principle agreed £10,000, and if a meeting of the Highways Committee can be arranged in the next 2 weeks, then I would say that we need to abandon this motion that Andy's proposing and go back to the Highways Committee first to seek their views on the document and have a proper debate and consideration of the paper.
Right, okay, thank you very much for that. Could I have other views, please?
Could I offer a slightly different perspective, please? I suppose the debate that's been taking place by email has caused me to look at it again, although I did comment initially, and I'm delighted that there will be an opportunity to amend the specification, because my comments hadn't been incorporated just by an oversight. But the reason that I think that this should go to the planning committee as well is that I don't think the issue of the village centre is purely an issue of to do with the scope of highways. If you look at the first 4 bullet points in the draft specification in paragraph 2.4, which are to do with street scene design, first impression of the village, creation of a cafe society feel. To me, these are thoughts that should be considered by the planning committee. They sound eminently reasonable to me, but are there other things that ought to be in the specification? If our aim is to improve the sort of general quality of the village centre, as I think it is, should we not include in the brief something about the whole sort of ambience of the area outside Tesco's? If we're going to pay for specialist services, should we not challenge them to come up with some cost-effective way of making that a more attractive environment, since people do congregate there? So my feeling is we should remit it to both Highways and Planning Committee, if Keith would agree to the latter. But on having said that, I can't see any reason, given the history in terms of the its basis in the neighbourhood plan and the village design statement, I can't see any reason why we shouldn't approve the setting aside of 10,000 as previously agreed by Finance Committee.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Could I just add to that? I accept Nick's comment about it should go to the planning committee, and I'm happy to amend my motion to say that it be remitted to both highways and planning.
Thank you very much, Howard. Other comments?
Can I come in on this, Roger? I mean, first of all, as chair of planning, I'm quite more than happy for it to come to planning for consideration. I think that's valid. I think we do have an issue here because it is one of these issues which crosses over more than one committee. You know, because it does have an impact on the Highways Committee. It also should have impact from input from the Planning Committee, and I think it's something which probably in the old days, before we had the project review group, would have just come to full council. But as it is now, we have the project review group sort of sitting in the middle, and I think that's a good thing, having attended that. But I think we're almost both arguing the same thing, but from different directions, because I personally would support this motion tonight. I don't see an issue in allocating the £10,000 because we're not going to spend it until we've been through the Highways Committee and the Finance Committee. But I think the allocation sets out a good symbol. I think as well, it also means that if the finance committee, if the highways committee and the planning committee are happy, and we can all come up with a draft that we're happy with, hopefully it would mean that we can expedite this a bit and move it forward, because the problem otherwise that I can see is I can see us getting to November and we're still going to be talking about the idea of doing this rather than actually moving anything forward. And I think there is a need to move things forward. I think as well, we do have to bear in mind the fact that we are going to hopefully soon from the Andrews Hatch development have quite an impact of steel coming in. And it would be quite nice to have something off the shelf which we could pull down and actually be able to say, yeah, okay, we're going to spend something on that because we've actually already got this lined up. And the other thing that the other thinking that I'm having there is the fact that there is money which has come from the government for town centres renewal. Who knows, it's possible that when the autumn statement comes, the Chancellor might say there's money available to parishes who can act quickly enough for village centre renewal. And I would hate to be in the situation of somebody turning around and saying, we'd quite like to give Liss £50,000, but hey, Liss, you haven't actually thought of anything that you'd want to spend it on. You haven't got anything shovel ready, as the term goes, to start moving that forward. And as part of that, I think one of the things I would say as well is that the National Park, although they haven't sent out the publicity on it yet, the National Park have today launched their own COVID-19 recovery fund, which is going to be able to put pots of money up to £75,000 into projects to move them forward. It's something that I was looking at this morning with my East Hants Rail Partnership hat on. And so I think I don't see a problem with the motion as it stands. I think we've had Andy's undertaking of it going to the Highways Committee and the Planning Committee. There's no way the money is going to be spent before the autumn, but I'd quite like us to be ready by the time we come back to council in September, that we are ready. And the only way that's going to happen realistically is if we expedite it a bit tonight.
Thank you very much.
Just add on a point of order, please. Sorry. On a point of order, an amendment is a proposal to remove or add words to a motion. It shall not negate the motion. So any amendment needs to be an amendment, you know, adding or taking away any words to the motion that is drafted, not a complete and utter change.
Can I make it clear that what I've proposed is not negating the motion?
Well,
I've actually proposed that the motion in its entirety should go to both the Planning Committee and the Highways Committee so that they can have their input. And that's not going to delay anything at all because we've had assurances of that. And it's the correct way of doing business is to put it to the committees first. And £10,000 is a lot of money to agree to without that. So I keep my motion. It does not negate the motion. It supports the motion and it's showing a way forward so that the Highways Committee can do the work that it should do and the Planning Committee should do the work that it should do.
Can I have any other views? I come back with a comment on that in a moment, but I would like other views in a moment. Anybody got other views?
Claire, I think.
Sorry, I'm just unmuting myself. I just wanted to add my support to Andy's motion, and almost exactly everything Keith said far more articulately than I ever could have.
Thank you. Any other views?
Sheila?
Well, I agree with Howard and Leanne. I think it needs to go back to have further discussion at committee level, planning and highways.
Okay.
Certainly highways, yes.
Okay, any other views? Right, okay. Howard, can I go back to your motion? If the motion is simply, your motion is simply to remit the motion in item 11 back to highways and planning.
Yes.
Well, I must admit that I'm attracted by what Keith is saying, that we need to get this on the books. So I would rather keep the motion, but add words at the end that said, subject to further scrutiny of the brief by the highways and planning committees. So we commit ourselves to the basic direction, but it can't move forward until it's been scrutinized further by highways and planning.
I don't think that's the same thing. I think it's ridiculous that we are trying to give £10,000 to a project that the appropriate committee has not discussed. And I think it's a very bad precedent, and I think it goes completely against the normal way of doing business. I know the project review committee have looked at it, and as I say, to quote the last few words I had, many projects will have origins within other committees, highways and facilities as examples, who will do much of the work. Now, at the moment, the Highways Committee has not had any opportunity so far to do anything other than agree that it's something we should process. And there's been no discussion on detail at all. And what we did do was we said that Andy could become the lead on it as chairman of the committee. But being the lead on it doesn't mean to say that that gives you the power to make a decision on what the committee is going to come up with. So we should do things in the right order. And these rules are there to make sure we get good decision making rather than dodgy decision making, because we're cutting corners. And I don't think that there is any reason why we should agree to this evening.
May I exercise a right to reply on that, Roger? Just a couple of factual corrections, if I may.
Just the factual corrections.
Okay,
possible.
so I mean, a factual correction is while the Highways Committee may not have formally considered it in a meeting, the document was circulated for comment to the Highways Committee, asking for thoughts within a week. While I accept others may not think that is enough, I don't believe that's no consultation with the committee and no opportunity to feed in thoughts. So I believe that's a factual point. And actually, I can't really remember the other points that Howard was making that I wanted to pick up on. So I'll just correct that factual point.
Okay, right. Can I just make one factual?
I do think that it's the highways' role as well to actually come up with a plan for the finance or a figure. I don't know where this figure's come from, how it's been arrived at. So surely it's the Highways Committee, having considered the briefing document, that comes up with a plan for the future, including the funding and the costs.
I really can't see why this is seen as being primarily highways. To me, this is about the village centre. It's about design.
It's about the village centre, Nick. But what my point is that the report, the ideas, the whole thing began with the Highways Committee. And I do appreciate that, and we've actually said as a committee that there will be other groups involved, but this is the ideas stage, putting the ideas on paper and then discussing those ideas and coming up with something firmer to then present to whoever it needs to be presented to.
Okay.
But surely what's proposed is that highways should have that opportunity, and planning should also have that opportunity to ensure we get the balance between what are effectively transport issues and what are effectively design issues. But that ultimately, whether the money is spent in full or in part will be for the project review group, which we've set up to make those sort of decisions. So to me, it seemed to me that it was a good compromise that Andy was suggesting.
Okay, right. I shall stop the debate at that point. I would just make two factual points. One, really for the record, that the project review group doesn't claim to have scrutinised in any detail this proposal. It merely noted it as being a priority for the council, and therefore it should move forward on that basis. But there's no claim by the project review group to have scrutinised as such. Secondly, of course, the origin of this, as Andy says, goes back certainly to the neighbourhood plan, but it wasn't just highways, I think. What I'm going to do is this. Howard, you are proposing a motion. Can you give me the actual wording of your motion, please?
This motion in its entirety, to make it clear, should be remitted to the highways and planning committees.
Right, thank you. And Leanne is seconding that.
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay. Can I suggest what is going to be an alternative an amendment, although Howard's amendment will be taken first. My amendment is that we take the motion as it is, but add at the end the words subject to further scrutiny of the brief by the highways and planning committees. So that is going to be my proposal, because I want things to continue to move forward while recognising the need for more detailed scrutiny. Is there anybody who'd be prepared to second that motion?
I'm prepared to second that, Roger.
Okay, thank you. Well, we would take Howard's amendment first, though, because that was the one that came forward. And we will have to...
If I may sum up as the proposer.
Yeah.
I think it's important...
Though, you have spoken a lot.
Sorry,
continue, Howard. All right, continue.
Right, I'm just responding as proposer of the motion.
Yes.
I think it's important that these two committees look at it and feed that result through to people. I don't think we should be allowing money or agreeing to money which could easily be agreed otherwise before we see what the detailed work, not final detail, but some detailed work of why, when and what, etc. And I would be very happy if we agreed that if we get to such a situation whereby a decision has to be made on the money, what we've done on that in the past is we have allowed the chairman of the council, the chairman of the finance committee and the vice chairman of the council to make a decision in an emergency. So if suddenly in the middle of August, when the highways committee and the planning committee have discussed this, I'm very happy, and obviously can't propose it at the moment, but I have to wait until we've dealt with the motion on the table. But I would be very happy to support that happening, and that's the way we normally deal with that.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much indeed for that. Right, now because we're going to have...
Chair, I do need to point out what I said earlier, that an amendment to motion is about adding or removing words. It cannot, an amendment is not to negate a motion. It cannot negate a motion, whereas Councillor Lindsley's amendment is negating the motion because it's taking away the allocation of the £10,000 up to £10,000 in ring-fenced reserves, which is the very point of the motion.
No, I'm not negating the motion at all. I'm supporting the motion, but I'm saying that it should be considered by the appropriate committee as exists in our committee structure before we actually end up with approving money to go towards it. It is a bad principle to approve the money before you've thought about it. And I've also suggested a solution that if in 3 weeks' time, after the planning committee and after the highways committee, I've had an opportunity to look at this and consider it, I have suggested that this could be quite easily handled by the chairman of the council, his vice chairman, and the chairman of the finance committee. And that's the way we've always dealt with these sort of situations, and it's always worked well in the past.
How we've done things in the past is not always the correct way. Standing orders are how we are regulated. I still feel my advice as clerk is still that amending the motion so that the £10,000 isn't allocated is effectively negating the motion. That's my advice, that I feel that is negating the object of the motion. But I leave it to you, but that's my advice.
Well, I'm sorry, but I have to contradict you. You are wrong. It does not negate the motion. It arranges it for it to be considered properly. And it's actually in support of them.
May I come in as to come back on my motion as my final comment on it before you?
Only on the procedural points. I don't want to hear any argument on the subject.
It is nothing more than a procedural point. It is that I would support your proposed wording, which I guess is not a procedural point, but a point to be made. And also, I would say that following standing orders and financial regulations is actually a greater financial control for the parish council than letting the chair of finance, vice chair and chair make an emergency spending decision.
Right, okay.
I'm sorry, but that is a way of doing it, and the fact that we've done it before doesn't mean to say we have to do it again. I agree, but in my time on the council, it has always worked quite happily. And,
okay.
and I'd be prepared to put that motion as I'm prepared to add that to my motion, to my amendment. No, well, it's not an amendment. I remit it to the Finance and Planning Committee and give authority to those three people to make a decision if it is required urgently.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's stop at that point on this. I will say, Howard, I do have misgivings because it seems to me effectively that you are stopping the council from considering this motion. Okay, it will come back in some form or other, but it does worry me. How I'm prepared to allow it, that you are saying remit the motion to highways and planning, and that's basically what you're saying.
Yes.
The entire motion. I wouldn't put in the bit about how to manage the detail of the finance. I think that's complicating it no end, nor do I necessarily like or agree with what you're proposing on that. So I would simply have a motion from you that is saying that the motion in item 11 should be remitted back for consideration by the Highways and Planning Committees.
Well, not back to them. The word back is wrong because it's never been considered by either of those committees.
Yes, right. I take the semantic point that is remitted to them to report back to the council.
Yes.
Okay. So that would be your motion, that to remit this motion to the Highways and Planning Committees for them to consider and report back to the council.
Agreed, yeah.
Okay, and Leanne will second that motion.
Yes, yeah, I'll second that.
Right. I will take a vote on that, but in the knowledge that I will then be putting a vote that accepts the motion that is here, but adds the words subject to further scrutiny by the Highways and Planning Committees. So there's a subtlety here that my proposal is that we still keep in terms of adopting the principle here, not least that Keith gave, but nothing is still going to happen until it's been seen by Highways and Planning under either route. So you may argue there's not a lot of difference, but I do think there's a presentational difference here. Anyway, can I put Howard's motion, that we remit the entire motion to the Highways and Planning Committee for them to report back. So I'm going to have to record carefully, along with the clerk, in favour of this motion. So I'm going to go through a vote by name. Sheila, are you in motion?
I'm sorry, I've lost the sound.
Could people all mute, please? Because I can't hear half of what people are saying now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it's different.
Okay.
Right. Okay. No, Sheila, are you in favour of Howard's motion? Yes or
Yes.
no? Okay. Right. Keith, yes or no?
Yes.
No. This all right. That's got yours, Sheila. Thank you. To Keith.
No.
No. Okay. Cindy, are you in favour of Howard's motion? Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay. Dawn is not with us. Margaret is not with us. Howard, you're obviously in favour of your own motion. Leanne, I assume you're in favour of the motion.
Yes, I am.
Andy?
No.
No. Claire?
No.
No. Nick?
No.
No. I will confer with the, and I have not voted, but my vote would be also a no. So I confirm that with the clerk, but that was 3 in favour of Howard's motion, but 6 against. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that. Can I put the alternative motion? The alternative motion is that we adopt the motion that's actually on the agenda, but with the words added, subject to further scrutiny of the brief by the Highways and Planning Committees. Now, I know you've expressed views on the previous, sorry, can I just clarify? Keith was seconding that one, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine, good. Again, those in favour of this motion, adopting what's on the agenda paper, but with those additional words. Sheila?
Well, given that the previous one was overruled, then yes, I will go with this.
Okay, thank you. Keith?
Yes.
Yes. Cindy?
Yes.
You? Howard?
No, and whilst I've got access, could I ask for recorded vote on both motions?
Absolutely. Okay, I'll leave that to the clerk, but we can record that. Leanne?
No.
Okay. Andy?
Yes.
Okay. Claire?
Yes.
Yes. Nick?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I would declare my own vote, which is a yes. In favour of that motion and 2 against. Okay, in that case, I declare that motion carried. Thank you very much. I do realise that that's a difficult issue, and I can see there's been problems of scrutiny of this item along the way, but I do feel that there will still now be adequate opportunity, and nothing will happen until Highways and Planning have looked at it. So don't worry about this going off in some other direction. That will still happen. Okay, thank you very much. Item 12. Just to say, in terms of the men's shed, we had a meeting I attended along with the clerk with the Newman Collard Trust and the men's shed, which I think we've been in agreement as to what I was seeking to do here, which is essentially that the men's shed would take over the majority of the hut, but a garage, workshop, storage and welfare facilities would be provided for the meet our needs. That has to be secured in various agreements, but it was made clear that this should be provided for our needs should be met at no cost to us, and hopefully in perpetuity or something similar to that, so that we can be sure that for the future we are secure in terms of the provision we make to the groundsman. There will have to be agreements between the trust and the men's shed, because effectively the men's shed will become a tenant of the trust, and it'll be a tenancy or a license form which allows them to operate. But hopefully we can get this resolved over the next 2 months. There is a planning application in which sets the planning aspect of this, which I'm told today by Brian Mayo as chairman of the Men's Trust. They've been given a provisional date of the 7th of September for a decision on the planning application. All I would say is don't hold your breath, but that's what the officer has provisionally said as a date. However, even though the application has been submitted and 1 or 2 queries in answer to the planning authority have been met, it hasn't yet appeared on the portal as being validated. So we wait to see. So what we will do is basically, as these negotiations proceed, we'll try and keep everybody up to date. And at some point or other, there will have to be a formal agreement between ourselves, the men's shed and the trust, which will have to be formally agreed by the council and which will need a formal signature. On a day-to-day basis, one would expect the facilities committee to be managing our end of that process, although a lot of it is to do with the practical requirements of ensuring that whatever the groundsman needs is provided, both in terms of him being able to do his work, but also just accommodation and loos and other facilities and so on for him. So all I'm really saying at the moment is watch this space, that we're now getting down to the nitty-gritty. But as soon as we can bring a firm proposal back to council, that is what we will do via the facilities committee. Any comment? Howard, I've lost you.
No, yes.
Yes, Howard, I've got you.
Yeah, okay. I should ask to record in the minutes that I am a trustee of Newman Collard,
Yeah.
but that doesn't involve any pecuniary interest, but I think it's always safer to do that. And just to say, the trust are looking at licensing men's sheds. It will probably need more than the current year's license, but the trust is quite enthusiastic about making this succeed.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Yes, Dorothy Collard had made it clear it would have to be a longer period than just a single year. So we wait to see what comes out of that process. But that's
could I just say that I'm also on the board of trustees for the Newman Collard, but obviously no interest. Yeah.
Okay, that's all I was going to say on the update. Right. Can I move on to item 13? Appointment to committees and outside bodies. I'm only aware of one particular issue to mention, in that Ian James has resigned as a councillor, and he was one of the appointees as a trustee for the Newman Collard Trust. Now we do have, outside people who we have appointed to other bodies, but I think it is normal that we would ask first as to whether there are any sitting councillors who would wish to take up a position. And I've spoken with Ian today about this. He's quite happy, I think, and rather expected it, that we would take the opportunity to see if one of the sitting councillors would wish to put themselves forward as a trustee on Newman Collard. And I think that's what we need to do. So that is one action. So can I invite people to come forward to the clerk if they are interested in doing that? If not, I have no reason to think Ian hasn't done a perfectly good job, but it would be normal to look to one of our own councillors in the first instance. Secondly, we are very short of people on facilities committee at the moment, with both the resignation of David and of Ian from that. David has said that he is happy to be co-opted onto that. We have one co-option there already, which is Brian Mayo, who happens to be chairman of the Men's Trust. It is actually quite convenient, that relationship, but I think it's a very particular one. Brian says that he would quite like to see out the remainder of his year, and then will probably be prepared to stand down. David, as you know, has been doing a great deal of work for us on facilities. So I personally think there would be advantage in co-opting into finance. And that is a decision to be made by council and not by the individual committee. Now, are people...
Did you say finance or
facilities? Did I say finance? I apologise for doing my best to confuse everybody. Again, we don't necessarily have to finalise that today, but the proposal that I have is that David should be co-opted onto the facilities committee. Do I have any comment on that?
But could I just say that it would be, if he is going to be, and we're going to have a meeting shortly, it would be quite good if we could make that decision tonight.
Mm.
And I certainly think, in terms of the good of the village, to keep David on board, to provide the continuity and energy and ideas that he's previously offered, albeit in smaller amounts, would be really useful.
Okay, I take that point, and I personally would also, if people are comfortable, would be prepared to co-opt him at this meeting, and I do know David will is prepared to accept if he is co-opted. We will in due course, of course, be appointing 2 new councillors, but we do not know who they're going to be or what talents they're going to bring with them, and we do have an immediate need, I think, to support facilities as it's going through its discussions over the men's shed, which David is the person who knows more about than anybody else. So if you're all comfortable with that, I would propose David is co-opted on the facilities committee.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much, Howard. Okay. Just check with the clerk. Are there any other appointments we need to deal with?
I've got one.
Yep.
When the projects review committee was set up, I volunteered to be on it, and I thought I was. And I've since discovered, somebody's told me that on a document on the 5th of the 3rd shows me on it. And I think I thought I was on as an individual, and Sarah thought I was on as a chair of finance. I don't know, I'm not accusing Sarah of making a mistake. I'll take it as my mistake, but I would like to be on that committee.
Okay. Right, okay. Of course, since
Sheila's trying to attach her attention. Sheila?
I'd quite like to be on the project review committee too, please.
Right.
I know Leanne and I spoke about it months and months ago when we were still meeting. And then I was ill, so I didn't, but yes, I would now like to be, yeah.
Right, okay. It's certainly, let me go back to the Howard situation, in that obviously Claire is there as chairman of finance on that. But there are 2 or 3 positions where people are there by right of their office, but otherwise we do have individuals on it. If others are comfortable, I have no problem with both Howard and Sheila's name being put forward, but I see if there are other views.
Yeah, I make it clear I'm not criticising the staff in any way whatsoever on that. It was probably my misunderstanding.
No, well, since then, because there were changes over the chairman of finance, I can well imagine there's been some confusion over that point. If others are comfortable, then one will appoint Howard and Sheila as individual members of the project review committee.
Can we just have a quick vote on the appointments and a seconder for Howard and Sheila to go on to
Right. Could I have, okay. We could do it individually, but I'd rather do it just jointly. Right. I will propose them. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second them.
Okay. All those in favour of those appointments?
Aye.
Right. Okay. Anybody against? Thank you very much. Let's assume that's done. Right. That brings us to the end of the agenda. Don't all cheer at once. Thank you very much indeed. It's always difficult. I find doing meetings by Zoom very difficult, I must say. But I think we've managed to get through it, including dealing with a difficult item on the way. So thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. Thank you.
See you later. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.
Bye.